Hello friends, welcome to the program. The topic selected for the lecture is Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence. The objectives set for the lecture are to understand Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence, to know about the purpose behind construction of Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence, to know about the theoretical perspective of the test of intelligence, to know about the description and interpretation of the test of intelligence, and to know about the psychometric parameters of the Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence, to know about the applications of Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence. Dear students, let us first understand what Culture Fair Test of Intelligence means. Culture Fair Intelligence Test was named after the US psychologist Raymond Bernard Cattell, who first published it in the Journal of Educational Psychology in 1940, describing it as culture-free. This test was originally called the Culture-Free Intelligence Test, but was changed when it became evident that cultural influences can't be completely extirpated from test of intelligence. It's a non-verbal instrument to measure one's analytical and reasoning ability in the abstract and novel situations. The tests include mazes, classifications, conditions, and series. Such problems are believed to be common with all cultures. That's the reason that the testing industry claims it free from all cultural influences. The Culture Fair is a high-speed IQ test. The full scale is to be resolved in less than an hour. Now the purpose of Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence. Cattells Culture Fair Test is an intelligence test designed specifically to measure the fluid intelligence in a manner to avoid the test bias assumed to affect scores on more conventional tests such as the Wechsler scale and the Stanford-Binet test by excluding items requiring linguistic skills and general knowledge. Now the theoretical perspective of Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence. Dear students, Cattell and Horn used factor analysis to study the structure of intelligence. They argued that general intelligence exists and consists of two factors: fluid intelligence, GF, and crystallized intelligence, GC. Whereas fluid intelligence is biologically and constitutionally based, crystallized intelligence is the actual level of a person's cognitive functioning based on the augmentation of fluid intelligence through socio-cultural and experiential learning, including formal schooling. Fluid intelligence is a largely non-verbal and relatively culture-reduced form of mental efficiency. It is related to a person's inherent capacity to learn and solve problems. This fluid intelligence is used when a task requires adaptation to a new situation. For these reasons, Cattell believed that measures of fluid intelligence were culture-free. Based on this assumption, he devised the Culture Fair Intelligence Test in an attempt to eliminate cultural biases in testing. However, scholars have subsequently concluded that the attempt to construct measures of cognitive ability devoid of the influences of experiential and cultural conditions is a challenging one. Now let us go through the description and interpretation of Cattells Culture Fair Test of Intelligence. Raymond Bernard Cattell got interested in the measurement of intelligence in late 1920. This work resulted to the publication of the Cattell's Group and Intelligence Test in 1930. After 5 years, several of the scales were revised into non-verbal forms to diminish the unwanted and unnecessary effects of verbal fluency in the measurement of intelligence. Another version of the test appeared in 1940. At this stage, items had become completely perpetual and were organized to 6 subtests, 3 of which have been retained in the present format. Of the 159 items analyzed, 72 of satisfactory validity and reliability were retained for the published edition. In 1949, Culture Fair Intelligence Test underwent another revision and adopted the format. This format has been retained since, consisting of 4 subtests: series, classification, matrices and conditions at each of 2 difficult levels. In 1961, there was a slight adjustment in the difficulty level, sequencing for a few items. Norm samples were expanded to achieve better national representation. This resulted in its current form. The Culture Fair Intelligence Test has gone through many revisions since its inception, latest revision being in 1961, and since then very smart and minor changes have been introduced. Currently, we can find 3 scales of the Culture Fair IQ test with non-verbal visual puzzles. The scale first of the Culture Fair test is used for children of the age of 4 to 8 years and the mentally retarded people. Scale 1 includes 8 subtests of mazes, copying symbols, identifying similar drawings, and other non-verbal tasks. This scale is not important for the career building efforts. However, the scale number 2 and 3 are used for screening purposes at job and college admission situations. There are 3 scales of Cattells Culture Fair Intelligence Tests, including number first, Scale 1, used for the age group of 4 to 8 years and cognitively impaired adults. Scale 1 involves considerable interaction between tester and the examiner. 4 of the subtests must be administered individually. Thus, in some respects, Scale 1 is more of an individual test than a group test. Scale 2, used for the age group of the age 8 to 13 years and average adults. Scale 3, used for age group of 13 to 17 and superior adults. The Scale 2 and 3 contain 2 equivalent forms as A and B. Each form can be administered individually or with the combination of other form. When it is administered individually, it's called short intelligence test. However, when the both forms of a scale are combined, it's called a full scale test. Scales 2 and 3 have 4 subtests, 4 kinds of IQ problems, which include number first, the series. In this subtest, the individual has to select the item that completes the series. He is presented with an incomplete progressive series. In Scale 2, series has 12 items to be completed in 3 minutes. In the series portion of Scale 3, 13 items have to be completed in 3 minutes. Number second is the classification. In this subtest, that item in each row has to be marked that doesn't belong with the others. This subtest differs slightly in scale 2 and 3. In scale 2, the individual is presented with 5 figures. He must select one which is different from the other 4. In scale 3, the individual must correctly identify 2 figures which are in some way different from the others. In scale 2, the classification subtest has 14 items to be completed in 4 minutes. Same is the case for the classification subtest in scale 3. Number 3 is the matrices. In this subtest, that item has to be marked that completes the given matrix of the pattern. In scale 2, the matrices subtest has 12 items to be completed in 3 minutes. In the matrices portion of scale 3, 13 items have to be completed in 3 minutes. Number 4 is the conditions. The subtest conditions requires the individual to select on the 5 choices provided, the duplicate conditions given in the far left box. In scale 2, the condition subtest has 8 items to be completed in 2.5 minutes. In the conditions portion of scale 3, 10 items have to be completed in 2.5 minutes. This test can be administered both on the individual and in groups. Total administration time is 12.5 minutes. The total number of items in scale 2 is 46 and the total number of items in scale 3 is 50. Answers can be marked in the test booklet of 8 pages or on a separate answer sheet. Scoring can be done by calculating the percentiles of raw scores, and then these percentiles are converted into normalized standard scores IQs with the mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 16. Now let us see the psychometric details of Cattells Culture Fair test of intelligence. First comes the reliability. There is an entirely satisfactory internal consistency of the general score. On the Kronberg alpha, it's 0.80. The part A is slightly lower but satisfactory. Nevertheless, Kronberg alpha of 0.77 to 0.81 depending on the sample. There is a high test retest reliability in adults. Lower in high school students, the scores are significantly better after 3 weeks. Then coming to validity. The validity of the Culture Fair test 3 as a test measuring fluid intelligence proved by decreasing of scores with the age. High correlation with the scores of fluid intelligence tests like Raven's matrices and Raven's matrices advanced. Significant but lower with crystallized intelligence tests like Omnibus and APIS. Correlation of Culture Fair test 3 scores with school grades in high school students. Then coming to standardization of the test. The developers of the Culture Fair test took considerably large samples of the population to standardize the results. The standardized group for the scale 2 was comprised of 4,328 people, including males and females. The developers including population not only from various regions of the United States but also from the Great Britain. The standardized group for the scale 3 of the Culture Fair intelligence test was comprised of 3,140 people. The sample included students from the American high schools and young adults from all over the America. However, critics reject the standardization of the Culture Fair intelligence test on solid grounds. They rightly claim that the sample was not true representative. The standardization process has not even described percentage of women, African Americans, Americans, and other sections of the population. Thus, the whole process of standardization is faulty and misleading. Now, dear students, let us see what are the applications of Cattells Culture Fair test of intelligence. Some of the applications of Cattells Culture Fair test of intelligence are: some high IQ societies, for example, the 999 Society, accepts the Culture Fair Intelligence Test 3 as one of a variety of old and new tests for admission to the society. A combined raw score of 85 on forms A and B is required for admission. Culture Fair Intelligence Test 3 also informs about the intellectual capability of the examinee. It helps in the identification of emotional or learning problems. It's helpful in assessing an applicant's potential to perform job-relevant tasks that involve cognitive ability. It's also used in selecting students with regard to their probable success in college, in chance of attaining scholarships, and increasing the effectiveness of vocational guidance decisions, both for students and adults. Dear students, we may conclude that Culture Fair Intelligence Test was named after the US psychologist Raymond Bernard Cattell, who first published it in the Journal of Educational Psychology in 1940, describing it as culture-free. Cattell's Culture Fair test is an intelligence test designed specifically to measure the fluid intelligence in a manner to avoid the test bias assumed to affect scores on more conventional tests like as the Wechsler scale and the Stanford-Binet test, by excluding items requiring linguistic skills and general knowledge. Currently, we can find 3 scales of the Culture Fair IQ test with non-verbal visual puzzles. The scale first of the Culture Fair test is used for children between the age of 4 to 8 years and the mental retarded people. Scale first includes 8 subtests of mazes, copying symbols, identifying similar drawings, and other non-verbal tasks. The scale is not important for the career building efforts. However, the scale number 2 and 3 are used for the screening purposes at job and college admission situations. That's all about the Cattells Culture Fair test of intelligence. I hope you understood the content and enjoyed the program. Thanks for watching.